Hey, servant girl,
No?
shouldn't you
While
be pouring
success and
wine instead of
beauty
standing
tend
here?
to
The
forgotten.
words cut through the glittering air of the Sterling family's gala like broken glass, sharp enough to silence the laughter of nearby guests before replacing it with cruel chuckles. Evelyn Carter did not flinch. Standing in a modest cream dress with no jewels, no designer label flashing across her neckline, she looked out of place among the gowns stitched with diamonds. But her stillness had weight. She raised her phone to her ear, voice calm and deliberate. Terminate the $750 million deal. Do it now. The smirks froze halfway across a row of polished faces. They didn't know what she'd just done. They only saw the authority with which she said it, the terrifying certainty of someone who wasn't begging to stay, but choosing whether they would. A young reporter near the stage instinctively angled her camera toward Evelyn, sensing a story burning beneath the surface. A waiter slowed as he passed, his jaw tightening but his silence agreeing with her unspoken strength. Across the room, Eleanor Sterling adjusted her pearl necklace, eyes narrowing, while her son Charles raised his champagne flute and mocked, "Sweetheart, investors only. Which catering company sent you?" More laughter erupted, shallow and cruel. Evelyn's eyes never moved from them. The chandelier's golden light fractured against her calm, like the room itself knew something was about to break. Behind the sneers, behind the polished arrogance, a storm was already gathering. And Evelyn held the lightning in her hand. Tell me, if you were in her shoes, humiliated in front of hundreds, mocked as if you didn't belong, would you keep silent or would you strike back? Evelyn Carter had long ago learned the art of standing still while the world tried to shove her aside. At 29, she had been escorted out of a boardroom she was scheduled to lead simply because a receptionist thought she was lost. The humiliation had burned like acid, but she had swallowed it whole, walked out, and returned the next morning as the youngest partner to ever finalize a cross-border merger. At 37, during the heat of a negotiation for a global acquisition, one of the opposing executives had casually mistaken her for her own assistant, pushing a stack of papers into her hands without even making eye contact. She had smiled then, taken the papers, and calmly slid them back across the table with her signature already on the line that mattered. The look on his face when he realized his error had been worth every ounce of patience. Evelyn carried these memories like invisible armor, reminders that dignity wasn't granted by anyone in rooms like this. It was carved into stone by persistence, precision, and a refusal to break even when the air itself pressed against her. Tonight, under the chandeliers of the Sterling Gala, she looked like a quiet anomaly in a room flooded with opulence. The women around her wore gowns sewn with crystals, their wrists stacked with diamond bracelets, while the men paraded in tuxedos, fitted so sharply they looked like uniforms of entitlement. Evelyn wore a cream-colored dress, simple and deliberate, chosen not because she couldn't afford more, but because she refused to let fabric or glitter define her value. She wanted every eye that underestimated her to feel the sting of their miscalculation. Her presence had always unsettled the entitled because she never played their game. They thrived on loud entrances, exaggerated displays of power, names dropped like weapons. Evelyn thrived on silence, on precision, on timing her words so that when she finally spoke, there was no room left for doubt. That was why the smirk on Eleanor Sterling's face, the one that suggested Evelyn was trespassing, did not wound her. It merely confirmed that the Sterlings were already blind to the shift happening beneath their feet. She could feel her pulse steady, not racing, not shaken, as though her heart had memorized this rhythm long ago. Insult, dismissal, disbelief, and then the reveal. The Sterling family thought tonight was theirs. They thought the celebration was secured, the deal untouchable. But Evelyn knew better. She had built the scaffolding of that $750 million agreement with her own hands. Every clause, every figure, every partner carefully woven together like the threads of a tapestry no one else could replicate. They didn't even realize that she was the architect of the very empire they were drinking to. The irony sat heavy in her chest, not painful, but sharpened into resolve. She scanned the ballroom now, seeing faces lit by arrogance, polished champagne glasses lifted in mockery, and she felt a strange calm settle deeper. They had mistaken her silence for submission, her simplicity for weakness. They had no idea that silence was her strategy and simplicity was her weapon. The truth was not far off, waiting for the right breath, the right sentence, to strike like thunder rolling across the marble floor. And Evelyn Carter, standing with her phone still pressed lightly to her ear, knew that every insult tonight was only fueling the storm she had been preparing all her life to unleash. The laughter grew louder, bouncing off the marble walls of the ballroom, a chorus of privilege feeding on its own cruelty. Eleanor Sterling, wrapped in midnight silk and crowned with a necklace of pearls that gleamed like a shield of inherited power, took a deliberate step forward. In her hand, she held Evelyn's event pass, the proof of her invitation, the fragile slip of paper that confirmed her place in the room. With a sharp rip, Eleanor tore it in half, the sound echoing louder than the string quartet playing in the corner. The music faltered as heads turned, gasps threading through the crowd. Eleanor held the torn pieces like trophies between her manicured fingers, her smile tight and merciless. "You don't belong here," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like ice. Charles Sterling Jr., tall and broad in his tailored tuxedo, seized the moment to escalate. He raised his champagne glass high, his laughter booming as if to summon the crowd into agreement. "Security!" he barked, snapping his fingers. "Escort this pretender out before she embarrasses herself further. This event is for investors who actually matter, not for gatecrashers." His words rippled outward, drawing more eyes, more murmurs, more phones raised discreetly to capture the unfolding drama. Evelyn stood still, her face unflinching, the phone still resting against her ear. Clara Hayes, the young reporter who had been hovering near the stage, froze for a second before sliding her phone into recording mode. She framed Evelyn in the lens, the simple cream dress against the sea of extravagance, the calm against the storm. Her pulse raced, but her hands stayed steady, knowing instinctively this was bigger than gossip. It was history demanding to be documented. A few feet away, Luis Romero, a catering staffer no older than 22, tightened his grip on the tray he carried. His knuckles whitened, and though he said nothing, his eyes burned with quiet defiance as he glanced between Evelyn and the Sterling family. He knew injustice when he saw it. He had lived too many versions of it in shadows the powerful never noticed. The guests whispered now, their curiosity mixing with discomfort. Some smirked, eager to see Evelyn humiliated. Others hesitated, sensing something was wrong, but unwilling to stand against the Sterling's dominance. A security guard in his 40s approached cautiously, his silver earpiece catching the light. "Ma'am," he said, his tone polite but uncertain, "I need to see your credentials." Evelyn's eyes shifted briefly to the shredded pieces in Eleanor's hand, then back to the guard. "They're gone," she said evenly. The simplicity of the statement carried a weight no one expected. Clara zoomed her camera closer, capturing Eleanor's smirk, the torn pass fluttering slightly, as if mocking the truth. Charles Sterling Jr. grinned wider, sensing victory. "There it is," he declared, turning toward the crowd as if presenting evidence. "Fraud. She's pretending to be someone she's not, trying to insert herself into a $750 million deal she has no part in." His voice boomed, and for a moment the crowd leaned into his performance. But Evelyn didn't move. She didn't argue. Her silence was not submission. It was coiled strength, the kind that made the air itself feel heavier, as if waiting for a storm to break. Clara's breath caught as she whispered to herself, "She's not the one cornered." Luis shifted his tray against his chest, jaw tightening further, silently agreeing. In that moment, the balance of the room began to tilt, though most didn't yet realize it. They thought Evelyn was outnumbered. They didn't see that the more they tried to strip her of dignity, the more power she quietly gathered. And when she finally spoke, the room would remember every cruel laugh and every careless word. Evelyn lowered her phone slightly, her gaze never leaving the faces that mocked her. The room had grown hushed, the laughter thinning into uneasy murmurs, but she chose that silence as her stage. Her voice was calm, steady, each word deliberate enough to slice through the air like a blade. "Move the capital to Halden Group. Do not wait for the signing." Her tone carried no hesitation, and though only a few within arm's reach could hear the command, the weight of it rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. Those close enough to catch the words gasped, their eyes widening as if a secret door had just been opened in front of them. Whispers spread in a widening circle. Halden, capital transfer, 750 million. The phrases rolled from lip to lip, scattering across the ballroom faster than the music still trickling faintly from the quartet. A man in a gray suit leaned to his wife, his face pale. Did she just say Halden? As in Halden Group? His wife's eyes darted to the Sterling family and then back to Evelyn, her mouth tightening in alarm. Charles Sterling Jr. let out a sharp laugh, trying to pull the crowd back under his control. A bluff, he declared, his voice pitched high, forcing confidence he no longer possessed. No one cancels $750 million over a party spat. It's theater. But Evelyn didn't so much as blink. She pressed the phone back to her ear, her jaw set with precision. Confirm the directive. Begin phase 2 immediately. Clara Hayes, the reporter, felt her chest tighten as adrenaline coursed through her. She tilted her phone, recording not only Evelyn, but the Sterling heirs whose smirks were starting to fray at the edges. It wasn't theater. She could see it in the way the security guard had frozen mid-step, uncertain now of which authority to obey. Luis Romero, the young catering staffer, shifted his tray aside and murmured under his breath, "She's not bluffing." He wasn't speaking to anyone in particular, but the waiter beside him caught it and nodded faintly. Both men aware they were witnessing something far greater than an argument at a gala. Eleanor Sterling's pearls trembled against her throat as she adjusted her necklace with stiff fingers. Her eyes darted toward Charles Jr., silently urging him to regain control, but her own composure cracked for the briefest moment. Evelyn noticed. Everyone did. She allowed the silence to hang, stretching longer, tighter, until it was almost unbearable. Then she spoke again into the phone, her voice soft but unmistakable. Priority 1 confirmed, all transfers authorized. Around the ballroom, smartphones buzzed quietly in purses and pockets as notifications began to trickle in. Halden Group trending, whispers of an unexpected capital influx, speculation about Sterling vulnerability. The noise of the room shifted. Conversations cut off mid-sentence, glasses lowered halfway from lips, eyes flickering between Evelyn and the Sterling family as the power balance tilted. Charles Jr. stepped forward, his mockery gone, his voice edged with irritation. You think anyone believes this performance? You're a nobody here, a trespasser pretending to play with real money. Evelyn finally shifted her gaze toward him, the first time she truly acknowledged his existence, and her eyes were steady, cold, and utterly unbothered. No bluff, just business. Her words landed with the weight of inevitability. Clara's recording caught it all, the poise, the authority, the sudden hush of the crowd that seemed to recognize truth when it heard it. Luis exhaled sharply, his faith in her solidifying. He whispered again, louder this time, "She's in control." It wasn't only his words, it was the way the energy of the room bent toward her, as if even the chandeliers had dimmed in deference. Eleanor Sterling's voice broke through again, brittle but forceful. "Security! Remove her now!" The guard hesitated once more, his eyes flicking from the woman with torn credentials to the one whose quiet words were already reshaping the night. The pause was long enough to matter. Evelyn lowered her phone just enough so her words could carry across the marble floor. "Are you certain you want me removed? Because if I leave, the Sterling name leaves with me." The statement hung in the air like thunder before the storm breaks, and for the first time all evening, the laughter was gone. The ballroom had gone heavy with tension, every breath thick with anticipation, when Clara Hayes finally broke the silence. Her voice trembled at first but steadied as she spoke, clear enough for the nearest tables to hear. "For the record," she said, lifting her phone higher so the glowing red dot of her recording was undeniable. "She was invited. I saw her name on the investor list this afternoon." The ripple of her words spread fast, sparking confusion among guests who had been content to watch the humiliation unfold. Charles Sterling Jr. barked out a laugh, sharp and forced. "You must have misread it." "There's no way." Clara cut him off, her chin lifting in defiance. "I didn't, and I'm not the only one who saw it." From the far side of the room, a new voice chimed in. Luis Romero, his uniform stark against the glitter of the gala. His words weren't loud, but the weight of truth carried them across the hush. "She's telling the truth." Gas flickered through the crowd, and for a fraction of a second, Eleanor Sterling's smile faltered, the perfect facade slipping to reveal unease. Evelyn caught it, and so did everyone else. She let the moment linger, her silence pressing harder than any raised voice could. Finally, she lowered her phone, holding it loosely at her side, and stepped forward into the space that had been thick with accusation. Her heels clicked against the marble like a countdown, and the crowd instinctively parted, forming a corridor of expectation. She looked at the Sterlings, the pearls, the tailored tuxedos, the sneers, and then out at the room that had been complicit in their mockery. "You spent the last 15 minutes treating me like I wandered in here by mistake," she said, her voice calm enough to carry without amplification. "You've called me a fraud, destroyed my credentials, summoned security to drag me out of a celebration I built. And not once did you ask my name." The silence that followed was dense, suffocating, waiting for her to fill it. Clara zoomed in, capturing the sharpness in Evelyn's gaze, the quiet authority in her stance. The moment was electric, as though the entire room was leaning forward, suspended in the beat before revelation. Evelyn let them wait, let the weight of anticipation build until even Charles Jr.'s arrogance cracked into restless shifting. Then she spoke, and her voice landed like thunder. "I am Evelyn Carter, CEO of Carter Global, architect of the $750 million acquisition you've been bragging about tonight." Her words detonated across the ballroom. Gasps broke out in unison. Hands flew to mouths, and the collective shock surged through the air like a wave. Eleanor Sterling blinked rapidly, her pearls glinting as her throat tightened, but no words came. Charles Jr.'s arms, once folded with smugness, fell slack at his sides. From the back, someone whispered hoarsely, "She built the deal?" The truth had broken the facade, shattering the illusion of control the Sterlings had clung to. Evelyn's gaze swept over them, unyielding. "The $750 million you thought you owned was mine to direct. And while you spent this evening tearing me down, I gave it to your competitors." The declaration hit harder than any physical blow. A man near the back clapped once, sharply, the sound echoing like a gavel. Then another joined, and another, until applause mingled with the low, stunned murmur of investors, realizing the tectonic shift under their feet. Clara's phone captured it all, the collapse of arrogance and the rise of truth, preserved in pixels and sound bites that would live far beyond the chandelier light of the Sterling Gala. Evelyn didn't smile. She didn't need to. Her revelation wasn't for applause, it was for justice. And justice had landed in every heart that had witnessed the mockery turned inside out. The first phone buzzed near the back of the ballroom, its vibration cutting through the stunned silence like the first crack in ice. A man in a tailored navy suit glanced down at the glowing screen, his face draining of color. He turned it toward his companion, and within seconds the whispers spread like fire through dry grass. Push notifications were rolling in. "Sterling Group loses $750 million deal. Halden Group secures acquisition." Gasps erupted, no longer in disbelief at Evelyn's revelation, but in reaction to the undeniable confirmation. Across the ballroom, more phones chimed, vibrating in purses and pockets. Investors lifted their screens under the crystal light, the headlines stark and merciless. "Sterling family reputation in freefall." Sterling Global stock already dropping 12% in early trading. Halden Group surges with surprise capital influx. Eleanor Sterling's breath hitched audibly as she clutched her pearls tighter, her manicured hand trembling against her collarbone. Charles Sterling Jr. fumbled his phone from his pocket, scrolling rapidly before his expression collapsed. His forced smirk vanished, replaced by panic that slipped raw through his polished exterior. "No," he muttered under his breath. "This isn't possible." But it was not only possible, it was public. Clara Hayes steadied her camera, capturing the exact moment the Sterling heir's mask fell away. Her live stream lit up with comments, shocked emojis, furious demands for justice, cheers of vindication. The audience beyond the ballroom was swelling by the second, their voices amplifying Evelyn's quiet power. Luis Romero, still standing near the edge with his empty tray, exchanged a glance with another server. His jaw clenched as he whispered, "She just turned their empire into dust." The other nodded, eyes wide, silently grateful to have witnessed the balance of power tilt towards someone who had earned it rather than inherited it. Around them, the once loyal orbit of guests began to fracture. Investors who had been huddled near the Sterlings minutes earlier drifted toward Evelyn's side of the room. A pair of older financiers abandoned their champagne mid-sip and crossed the marble floor with deliberate steps, offering their hands in quiet congratulations to Evelyn. Her composure didn't waver. She acknowledged them with a nod, her phone still in her hand, her eyes calm, as though she had predicted every beat of this downfall. Eleanor Sterling, desperate, hissed under her breath to her son, "We can fix this. Damage control. Get ahead of it before the board." But Charles Jr. shook his head, his voice breaking as he answered, "It's already trending. Look." He held up his phone, and even Eleanor, always so poised, flinched at the harsh glow of headlines and social media storms already dismantling their legacy. Evelyn stepped slightly forwards, her voice carrying with ease. "Sterling arrogance has cost you everything. I warned you. My capital is no longer yours to squander. It belongs to Halden now." The words landed like a verdict, final and unappealable. At that exact moment, Margaret Lynn, Evelyn's chief of staff, approached with a sleek folder in hand. She leaned in, her voice low but steady. "Halden Group executives are ready to finalize the signatures tonight. They're waiting at their table." Evelyn inclined her head. "Good. Let's not keep them waiting." Margaret placed the folder on a nearby table, and Richard Grant, Halden's CEO, rose from his seat with a calm smile. He walked across the ballroom, extending his hand to Evelyn as cameras swiveled to capture the moment. They shook firmly, the deal sealed, not with the Sterlings, but with their fiercest rival. The symbolism was undeniable. The party meant to celebrate Sterling triumph had become the scene of their most public defeat. Across the room, another notification buzzed. "Investor Coalition withdraws additional $180 million from Sterling projects." The words spread in murmurs, each repetition another nail in the coffin. Eleanor's lips trembled, but when she opened her mouth to protest, no sound came. The guests were no longer listening. They were already reorienting toward Evelyn, toward the future she represented. Applause began again, hesitant at first, then swelling as the truth solidified. Evelyn did not bask in it. She turned slightly toward Richard Grant, her expression still steady. "This isn't victory," she murmured, loud enough for those nearest to hear. "It's correction." Around her, the Sterlings crumbled. Pearls and tuxedos suddenly little more than costumes of a fallen dynasty. And Evelyn Carter stood in their place, unshaken, the storm she had summoned now fully arrived. The city glowed gold beneath the setting sun, its towers catching fire in the last light of day as Evelyn Carter stood in her corner office, hands resting in her pockets. Behind her, the unopened envelope marked urgent from the Sterling board lay on her desk, its embossed seal already irrelevant. She didn't need to open it to know it was filled with apologies dressed as excuses, pleas masquerading as diplomacy. Power was never in their letter. It was in the fact that she didn't need it. Margaret Lynn entered quietly, tablet in hand. "Press is asking if you'll make a statement tomorrow," she said. Evelyn shook her head, her gaze fixed on the skyline. "The statement's already been made." Outside, the world moved on, traffic thickening, office lights flickering awake, life unfolding as though nothing had shifted. But Evelyn knew everything had. Sterling stock had collapsed, their investors scattered, and their influence evaporated into air. Halden Group was rising with her capital, her signature, her vision. The gala had been their stage, but she had turned it into her courtroom, and the verdict was written across every headline in the city. She lifted her coffee, taking a slow sip, and allowed herself the smallest smile. Not for victory, but for certainty. She had never needed to prove she belonged in their room. She had built the room they envied. She glanced once at the shredder where Sterling's envelope would soon meet its end, and turned back toward the window, her reflection overlaying the city she now commanded. Then she asked herself the only question that mattered. How many more rooms would she build before they finally understood? And now I'll ask you, if you were Evelyn Carter, humiliated, dismissed, told you didn't belong, would you have stayed silent or would you have torn down the very people who tried to erase you? Tell me in the comments below, what would you have done?